I am one of 4 sisters, but all of us were born very prematurely and suffered from numerous illnesses, which we continue to live with today. Hibakusha often suffer from various ailments, the after effects of the A-bombings, such as leukemia. However, they often avoid speaking to anyone about their illnesses because they do not want people to know. I know personally of someone who, when they were about to get married, told their fiancé that they were a second-generation Hibakusha, only to be asked to break off the engagement. I first learned that my mother was a Hibakusha when I was a 17-year-old high school student. I had a friend staying over the night, and it was the first time that my mother told me that she was a Hibakusha and about how much she had suffered as a result. It came as a great shock to me. My mother had a thick scar on her arm called a keloid, and when I was little, I would ask her how she had gotten it, but she would only tell me that it was from a burn she had gotten a long time ago. I feel bad that I probed her about it at the time. After hearing from her that she was a Hibakusha, I came to realize, in retrospect, that my mother was suffering from both the physical wounds and the psychological trauma of being a Hibakusha. When we were young, my older sister would often get nosebleeds, and I'd get fevers or feel feverish. If we told her mother, her face would turn pale and she'd say, "That's why I told you to go to bed early." I think that deep in my mother's heart, the last thing she wanted to believe was that her children's ailments were attributed to her being a Hibakusha. I think she was filled with a lot of complex emotions, such as resentment, grief, and anger about her exposure to the A-bomb. I understand now that this was the reason why, if we told her we did not feel well, she would respond angrily with, "Hurry up and go to sleep." I remember as a child being filled with dread every time I came home. My mother would always be lying down in the back room, and I was afraid that if I slid open the doors to her room, I would find her dead. Though I was very young, I have vivid memories of finding my mother having fainted in the bathroom or in the shower. When I was getting married, my mother worried about my weak constitution and feared that I might not be able to bear children, and so she decided to tell my husband the truth about me being a second-generation Hibakusha. Fortunately, my husband was understanding, and it did not particularly bother him, and we got married. I was haunted by the fear of whether or not I would be able to bear strong, healthy children. Finally, I became pregnant and gave birth to a healthy boy, but he was born with weak hip joints. One day, when he was in elementary school, he was jumping rope, and the following day he became unable to walk and had to crawl on all fours. When he was examined at the hospital, it was found that he had weak hip joints, just like me. And we were told that if he overexerted himself, it would strain him too much. I realized his condition was similar to mine. When I was pregnant with my second son, I was repeatedly admitted to the hospital and thought for sure that I would lose the baby because I bled so many times. I was in the hospital often during my pregnancy. It took a long time until I was finally able to give birth to my son, and he did not cry when he was born. It was suspected that he might have leukemia. My mother, who had encouraged me to stay strong up to that point, felt devastated to realize that her exposure to the atomic bomb had affected not only her daughters, but her grandchildren, who were third-generation Hibakusha as well. She was filled with rage and hatred toward the atomic bomb. For the first time, I saw my mother, who was strong and dauntless, break down and cry. Finally, my son was diagnosed with biliary atresia, a disease in which the bile duct to the liver is blocked. It was said that even if he had surgery, it was very unlikely that he would recover because it was a rare and intractable disease that affected 1 in 10,000 people. Miraculously, he recovered without any sign of damage to his mental faculties and is now fine and living out his youth with joy and vitality. On September 27, 1984, a peace conference for women against war was held at the Kyoto International Conference Hall, attended by women from 27 countries. I was asked to give a speech at the conference representing second-generation Hibakusha from Nagasaki. I wanted to express that it was women who must help create a world without war. In particular, I wanted to share about my mother's sufferings, her exposure to the A-bomb as an innocent young woman, and the subsequent hardships she endured, including discrimination she encountered as a Hibakusha. Because of her exposure to the A-bomb, my mother was stigmatized and looked down upon. For the sake of my mother and for all other Hibakusha, I spoke passionately to the representatives in attendance from all around the world. Even though I was born as a second-generation Hibakusha, I no longer view this as something negative, because I believe that it has given me a mission to convey to the world, through my personal experience in my life, how much suffering the atomic bomb caused us and the extent to which it continues to inflict damage on generations of people. I will continue to speak out in this way. This is how I choose to live my life.